Hi friends, and welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, then hi, welcome. My name is Anna, and today we are going to be talking about recovery, C-section versus vaginal birth. So I want to start by giving you guys a little bit of a background on both my C-section and my vaginal, because I believe that the background in this is going to be important as to how it relates to my recovery. So first I'll start off with my C-section, which was my first birth experience. I did not have a scheduled C-section. He was born via C-section because his cord got pinched and that was causing his heart rate to drop. So that's why that happened. I did labor for 21 hours before my C-section. I was about 8.5 centimeters dilated and baby had dropped. I was very close to making it to the end, but unfortunately, it was more important for us to make sure that he was safe. I did experience a very intense back labor with him. He was sunny side up, not breech, so he was head down, but he was facing the wrong way. So the back of his head was pushing on my tailbone, which I later found out that I possibly had a tailbone fracture during labor, which makes recovery harder. So I wanted to mention that in there as well. I was cut horizontally, which I'm pretty sure almost all C-sections are done that way. And the stitching took anywhere between 10 to 20 minutes. It was very fast. I'm pretty sure I was in the OR for no longer than a half an hour. It was very fast. Now I want to give you a little bit of background on my vaginal birth. My vaginal birth was a VBAC, which is a vaginal birth after C-section. I labored for 12 hours. I pushed for about 2.5 hours before delivering my second son, and his cord was extremely short. It ripped during the pushing process and he literally shot out of me. If you want to hear the full story, I will link in the little banner up above, and I will also link it down below. I have a 2-part labor and delivery series, not series, I guess, a 2-part video that I did on his delivery, which was traumatic and crazy. And then I also will link the labor and delivery story of my first son if you're interested in seeing that. So what I mean by saying that he shot out is usually, this is gonna be a little TMI interpretation, visual effects. So usually when a baby is coming out vaginally, you'll start seeing, as you dilate and baby drops and you're pushing, you start seeing the head in there, and so you'll be able to see a little bit of the head, and as it comes out it starts crowning and crowning and crowning. Then you get like a full head, then head comes out, and then shoulders come out. So there's like a whole process of stretching between this, when you can barely even see the head, to baby actually coming out. In my case, he was stuck for a long time because his cord was so short. So he went from being like this, where we could barely see his head, to one push being out completely. So because of that, my body did not have the time and the pull, I guess, that it needed to actually stretch, and so I ripped very, very bad. I had a severe 3rd-degree tear, which means that, again, TMI, but it means that I tore all the way to the other hole, and then on the inside and on the outside, and I also had tears in my labia. So because of all of that, I had basically reconstructive surgery down there. That sounds bad. But I did, and instead of just a normal stitching process, it was actually like a lot of work down there. So that took about 1.5 hours to 2 hours. So now we're going to talk about the actual recovery process. The recovery with my C-section was extremely painful. I was not at all prepared for having major abdominal surgery. When you have a C-section, they actually cut your abdominal muscles and your uterus, and it's major and it hurts. The first day or 2 that I was in the hospital, I was 1 and still had really good pain meds, and 2, I was being taken care of, so I just had to lay around and not really do anything except for just admire my adorable baby. So the stay in the hospital was actually not that bad. And also that first day, I was still on really good pain medication, so I got up and walked, and I thought I was totally fine, and I think that made me worse later on. Totally regret just getting up and walking around. I even walked to the nursery when he had the hearing test and just walked around the hospital. They told me not to. I'm like, I'm fine. Bad decision. After being released from the hospital, the recovery got a lot worse. Of course, I was still being taken care of. My husband and my mom took wonderful care of me, but I had to actually like get up from my bed, and I have a pretty tall bed. I have to get up from my bed and walk to the bathroom and walk back and shower and all of those things, and that was very painful. I spent 2 weeks in bed, completely useless, and then the third week I was just so tired of being in bed, and so the third week I spent the entire week on the couch, again completely useless. It was very painful because it's your abdominal muscles. You literally use them for everything. Like, you don't even realize that like you use your abdominal muscles when you move your arms or when you have to sneeze, and oh my gosh. And of course I had like kind of a little bit of a cold and a cough during that time, and that was just awful. And after those 3 weeks were up, I still had a lot of soreness. The scar was very tender, but it was tolerable, and I still experienced pain probably for another like 5 weeks after that. So it was a long recovery, and it was very painful and very intense at the beginning. So I know that because I labored for 21 hours, that made my recovery harder. Also because I was dealing with a possible tailbone fracture, that made my recovery harder. And then just in general, I guess maybe I'm just not that great with pain. I thought that I had a super high pain tolerance until I had 2 kids and realized how crazy that is. I see women all the time recovering so easy from births, and that was not my experience at all. I'm not trying to scare you, but that was not my reality. Now, because my baby had dropped already, the scar is very, very low. It's probably almost 2 inches below my pubic hairline. Sounds so gross. But it's very, very low, and even then they had to like actually like pull him up to get him out. Crazy. But I think that also maybe that caused a little bit more issues and pain. The center part of my scar has been a little bit raised almost this whole time. It's not until probably the last like month or 2 that it's starting to actually like fade in color and flatten out, so I'm excited about that. Now I want to tell you about my vaginal birth and the experience that I had with that. Because I had really, really bad tears, my recovery was also very hard and very painful. I was very swollen, and so for the first 17 hours I wasn't able to even like sit up at all. I was laying down on the bed with my legs up in the air. The swelling was very intense. It felt like I had a pillow down there. Again, about 17 hours later, I was able to semi-sit up, and I really only sat up and forced myself to sit up because I was going to be able to see my baby in the NICU. Again, if you want the whole story, I will link it down below and in the cards. So I forced myself to sit up, and it was excruciatingly painful. I think that my recovery also ended up being a little bit harder because I had to move around, because I had to get out of bed, and I had to go on a wheelchair or walk to where my baby was that whole first week. So that was very hard. So that whole first week that Era was in the hospital, it was very, very, very painful. The second week, once we got home, was very painful too, but different than from the C-section. In the C-section, I was completely useless. And with my vaginal birth, I was in a lot of pain, but I could move because it was a pain that was concentrated in an area, and it didn't hurt to move my arms. It didn't hurt to reach for things. It hurt to stand for a long time during those first few weeks of recovery after my vaginal birth. I don't think that I was able to really stand or even walk around my house for more than like 20-30 minutes at a time. Otherwise, a very painful feeling of heaviness down there. Oh man, that heaviness lasted for months too. So even after most of the pain was gone, still like walking around for more than like 20-30 minutes just felt heavy and painful. Oh man, I'm so glad that's over, right? Also, because everything was reconstructed down there was a lot of scar tissue, so everything just felt really tight and hard. I had some postpartum physical therapy that helped a little bit, and also I was dealing with stitches that weren't fully dissolving as fast as I wanted them to, and some of them were sticking out and causing pain. There was just a whole lot of everything going on down there. And even though the pain lasted a lot longer with my vaginal birth, it wasn't as debilitating as it was with my C-section, if that makes any sense. With my C-section, I'm pretty sure I was almost completely pain-free within 6 to 8 weeks. And with my vaginal birth, it took a good like 5 months before I could really say that I didn't have pain anymore. And of course, with intimacy, with the C-section, we didn't really wait that long. I mean, obviously I was in pain from surgery, so we waited until I wasn't like in horrible pain and I could move around. But once we did it, there was no pain with intimacy, and it was just normal. I mean, not really much went on down there, so there was not that much difference. But with my vaginal birth, I mean, I don't want to like give too much detail because I don't want my husband to get mad, but we waited a long time, and the first time we tried it, we couldn't because everything was so tight and so painful down there. So even after I didn't have pain just walking around and being, it was still very painful on the inside. Still now, the first couple of minutes during intimacy are painful. So even though it's been almost 10 months since he was born, I am still dealing with recovery of my vaginal birth. So in conclusion, C-section was more debilitating in my opinion because it cut through my ab muscles, and that made it so that I really honestly couldn't do anything. But my vaginal birth recovery lasted way longer. I am still dealing with some residual pain, so that's crappy. Not at all what I expected. Vaginal births are supposed to be really fast recovery, or you know, so they say. I think also because my vaginal birth was more recent, that also seems more painful. I'm just remembering it better, and so that pain seems a lot more intense. But I remember being just completely useless after my C-section, so I know that that pain was worse. I don't know. What do you guys think? After hearing this whole story, I want to know what you guys think. Do you think my C-section recovery was worse, or my vaginal birth recovery was worse? Either way, both of my recoveries were very hard. I honestly can't really fully judge which I thought was worse. I thought for sure after my C-section that there was nothing that was gonna compare in recovery, and now that I've gone through what I went through with a vaginal birth, it's up there. I do think that C-section was worse, but man, they're pretty close. I mean, either way, recovery was very, very hard for me. I know my circumstances were not the norm, so that made everything a lot tougher, but yeah, I don't know. Hopefully you guys enjoyed hearing all about my recovery with both of my labors. Hopefully this will help you out. If you are now pregnant, don't be scared. My circumstances and my story are not what is the most common, and most likely not what's gonna happen to you. I am not at all trying to scare you. I am just putting this out there because it is important that women are aware that anything can happen and that recovery can be really tough, and for you to prepare, because hopefully it's not horrible for you, but prepare because it's painful. Either way, it's painful. You're pushing a baby out of you. You carried a baby. Either you're pushing him out or you're getting it taken out. And it's gonna hurt. It's gonna hurt, and hopefully not as much as it hurt me. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like now I'm scaring you even worse. I'm gonna be done talking now. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please give this video a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe. Hit the bell to be notified when we post next, and we will see you next time.